I'm Matt Gilhooly, and this is The Life Shift, candid conversations about the pivotal moments that change lives forever. Hey friends, I am here with my friend Heather, and welcome Heather.
Hi everybody, and hey Matt, it's good to see you.
Heather and I have known each other for, was it 2009 maybe?
Yeah, I think about 12, 13 years now, so it's been a long time.
Yeah, so Heather and I work at a college in the Orlando area. We've worked together once in a while for the last 13 years. We've kind of drifted in and out of each other's lives, but always kind of been there when it was time to reconnect, which I always appreciate. And I was actually around for Heather's life shift and her pivotal moment and kind of right there at it. And so I am so thankful that you are here to share your story because, yes, it was very drastic for you and you went through a lot and you're in a great place now. But there are so many people that go through something similar that I think the things that you're going to share will be quite helpful to them. So I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, absolutely. When I heard you were doing this podcast, I was like so excited to listen to your first episode, and I've listened to all of them so far. And what I have found is that, when you're going through a really big life shift, right, it's like hard to see on the other side of it. But every single one of the episodes that I've heard, every story, even though our stories are all drastically different and that move us in different directions, there's always there's always another side. It's like
Mm-hmm.
almost like those things happen to you for a reason. And sometimes like you can't see out of the immediate situation, but then it pushes you in a direction you never thought you would be in, right? So it's been really great. I'm proud of you, Matt. I think this is such a great thing that you're doing. So good job. And thanks for inviting me to be a guest as well.
Well, thank you. I think you're right. I think we see so far in most of the conversations that I've had, if not all of them, I have found that every person, whether their situation was really drastic and scary or really sad, at the end of the day, when they are on that other side, as you describe, they're thankful or grateful that they went through that transitional period because it taught them something about themselves that they otherwise would not have learned. Not to say that they're grateful for the moment and how terrible it may have been or sad or whatever it may have been, but that it has taught them something.
Absolutely. I have learned so much about myself through this whole experience. So much.
Well, before we get to the actual life shift portion of your story, why don't you kind of set the scene of kind of what life was like before that moment? Like what were you doing? What was your regular day life looking
Yeah.
like?
Well, so I'm a mom. I have two boys. They're 11 and 13. I was married to their father for 16 years and we were together for 18. So I met him when I was 21 and we kind of grew up together, right? Because that's like a really young age to meet somebody. But well, we met at 21 and we were married at 23. And he was, a really great husband, for the time that we were together. Like my perception was that, we had something very special that a lot of people don't have, like I was happily married. I was working with, at the same company you were working at, and really loved my job, loved what I was doing. Just felt like I was in a very comfortable place, like in life. I come from a great family. I'm blessed in so many ways. I have, wonderful parents. I have wonderful friends that have been there for me. But now that I look back, my life was so different than it is today because I was living in a bubble. Like I was living in this, I was married and I spent very little time with my friends. I would see them on occasion, but now I have a much richer social life than I did before. And I was going to school. I'm working on my third degree, all in business,
Same.
but I'm working. Yeah, I know you are. Yeah. So yeah, I'm on the tail end of my dissertation process for my doctorate. So, but
Congratulations.
thank you. But I started that about 4 years ago, right before my life shift, right before my big drastic change.
Do you feel that you were living kind of the quote unquote expected life that society told you you were supposed to be living, in which, you got married, you had kids, you got a job, you got promoted in your job, you were getting
Hmm.
another degree, you were kind of doing all the things that society told you you had to do? Do you think that created that bubble for you?
Yeah, I was happy with that too. Like it was very textbook, like how people expect your life to go. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like just like, you meet someone when you're in college, you get married, you settle down, you have a family, and your family is your life, and that's it. And and my parents are still married. They've been married for over like 40, I think they're 47, 48 years right now.
Wow.
So I never expected my life to be any different than the way that, I was raised and that my parents were together all those years.
Yeah, and from the outside, we weren't super close. We were coworkers and friends through that, but from the
Yeah.
outside, your life was that idyllic, like, that married couple, kids, happy, things looked good. You were always, well, not always, but at work, you were, a happy person doing what you seemingly like to do. And so those of us on the outside didn't know that there was a life shift coming. And from my understanding, you didn't really know there was a life shift coming either. So maybe we
Oh,
we, we
no.
just rip off the band-aid and talk about that.
Yeah, no, I didn't. Okay, so my marriage ended, oh, geez, a little over 3 years ago. And it was so unexpected. So my ex-husband, I think now hindsight, I think he was dealing with a lot of stress in his life. Like he was having some challenges at work, and he was kind of depressed and couldn't really see outside of that.
Right.
And then he made some decisions that completely violated my trust in him.
Mm-hmm.
And we started working through those issues about 3 months before he moved out. But he made the decision to kind of move out instead of wanting to work through things. But up until that point, like we got along perfectly. I mean, we had so much fun. We did things, we went on vacations, we did things with the kids. We were and I know he was happy too. We were both like happily married, but you can't control what someone else is feeling or what their choices are. You can only choose how you react to those choices. And so I reached a point, shortly after he moved out, where I said, I'm not going to tolerate this. I'm not going to live in limbo land, and I'm not going to allow you to to tell me, that I'm the one that's all wrong and you didn't make any poor decisions. And so there was a lot of things that were happening that just really, and I want to be sensitive about what I talk about, because I don't know, I don't want my kids to necessarily know. I don't want them to find
Right. Of
find this
course.
podcast and judge things. All I can say is that I didn't expect it, and I had to take control of my own life and make the call to file for divorce, and I did that, and my divorce was final within 3 months. So it was really over the course of like maybe a 6 months period that we started arguing about things, and then the marriage was over, like it was done. And so I was literally
Complete 180.
oh my God. And I was reeling. I went through like this massive, like, gosh. So the day I found out that he was leaving, it was like we went to a therapy appointment with a therapist, and he left in the middle of that. And I went to my parents' house. I picked up a pack of cigarettes on my way to my parents' house to talk to them. And I literally sat, and I'm not even a smoker. I smoked in college, like, like way back. But I picked up a pack of cigarettes, and I sat on my parents' back patio telling them about everything that was going on. And they were clueless. They didn't know about any of our problems at that point. And I smoked an entire pack of cigarettes, like literally, like within a matter of 4 hours. I was like chain smoking cigarettes. Like, oh, it was
And
crazy
that was not
in
something
front of
that
my
you
parents. You
did,
know what I mean?
right?
No, not at all. So from there, it was like trying to pick up the pieces and put my life back together. I mean, I would literally spend hours just pacing the neighborhood, like in a daze, like just trying to wrap my head around what happened. And I went through all the stages of grief, from like just being sad and then angry. And then, like it was just this crazy recovery process. And it was just shocking and crazy. So I got myself in therapy right away, went and talked to a therapist. And that is what helped me gain control of my thoughts and my life basically at that point.
I remember, I think it was probably shortly after, it was before you got divorced, but I think it was after maybe he moved out and we went to lunch together and you told me what was going on. And I remember sitting there and just trying to find a way to let you know that a year from now, from that moment, you would look back and you would be so surprised on all the things that you had done for yourself. And I couldn't find the right words, right? Because who's going to believe that when you're in such a state of devastation? Because your entire life, or what you knew of your life, had just imploded. It had just,
Oh,
the
yes.
ceiling fell down, everything, it was flooded. There was,
Mm-hmm.
you didn't, you had your swimmies on and that was about it. I could tell
Yeah.
that you were in a space that you just didn't know, like, what is life now? Right? My life was like this for 18 years. And now what is it?
Yeah. I was in complete shock. Processing all of it was
Yeah.
just like, what in the world just happened? And not only that, but it was like I still loved him, like
Right?
I was like, it was like I was losing someone that
Because
I
you had no
was
choice in the
still
matter.
I had no choice other than to figure out how to react. And I'm so proud of myself for handling it the way I did. I mean, I'm not like
Maybe not the cigarettes.
yeah, the cigarettes were a bad idea. And I don't smoke anymore, so we're good. But um but I'm so proud of myself for number one, like being strong enough to stand up for myself and not allow someone else to treat me horribly through that process. And two, like just to be able to now like be kind to him even after being hurt and through that. Like I've honestly come to a point of like complete forgiveness. And like that was hard in the beginning, like when you're hurt, when you're deeply hurt. But I know that it's best for my kids, and I know that it's only hurting myself by hanging on to that resentment. And I've, I've come to a pretty great place of healing and knowing what I deserve. And I look at so many like, friends of mine who have gone through breakups, and they either one, they can't forgive, and so they're hanging on to that resentment and it's so hard for them.
It's
Or two, they
toxic.
keep it's super toxic. Or staying in a bad situation because they don't think that they can do any better, or that they can't find someone, like they settle for a bad situation. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the experience I'm grateful for what I've gone through with that. And I'm proud of myself for like being able to pull myself together enough to keep moving. You know what I mean?
You said that finding that therapist was really the key
Hmm.
to kind of unlocking how you can process and move forward and become who you are now. What can you talk a little bit about therapy and how that helped you?
Yeah. So I've always kind of like suffered from anxiety. Like I've had some anxiety challenges in the past. And for a while, like, I don't know if you remember this, but I was dealing with migraine issues and things like that when I changed positions. And it was like I had this whole like health
Yeah,
challenge even before this situation happened, before my divorce.
I do now. Yeah.
Yeah, but I didn't know it was anxiety then. It took me a while to figure, like, even pinpoint what it was, because I had never really felt those feelings before, or had like a panic attack or like any of that stuff, right? So I probably should have gone to therapy like years ago to deal with that and figure out that stuff.
Honestly,
But
everyone
I
should.
didn't know. Everyone should be in therapy. Yes, I agree. Even when you feel like you don't need it, you probably need it.
That's probably when you need it.
Right, right. Yes. And so, I found this amazing therapist over in Winter Park, and it was right around the corner from where I worked. So it was really easy for me to go. And I started going once a week and then eventually tapered off to like every other week. But as it was probably about 4 weeks after my ex moved out, I was like, I need to go to therapy. I need to talk to somebody about this and figure out like how to navigate and move forward. And just by talking through and being able to express to him what I was going through, it helped me sort through all the emotions and thoughts in my mind to where I could move forward and make the right decisions. And then he was so helpful too with helping me gain control of my anxiety issues as well, because I realized that all of that stemmed from the fear of the unknown. So just being able to kind of grasp that and talk through those things, and then him giving me some techniques to not only handle the anxiety issues, but also handle like how to work with somebody who is going through their own issues. You know what I mean? It was just very helpful. So I highly recommend everybody to have a therapist.
Yeah, so many of these conversations, we talk about the importance of mental health and understanding that, we don't have all the answers and we can't solve all the problems for ourselves, whether we want to or not. And going to see someone that is professionally trained in that area. I mean, when your car has problems, you bring it to a mechanic, right? And so it's
Absolutely.
kind of the,
Yeah.
like trust in the process. Plus, when someone's going through a breakup of any kind, you naturally have your friends that will tell you what you need to hear, which is
Hmm.
probably not helpful in a lot of cases.
Right.
They're playing along with your anger, or they're playing along with your sadness, or they're masking something, right? But by going to that therapist and that's unbiased, listening to you allows you to unpack everything, and then you can put it back however you need to, however that makes sense. So what's changed since, like, what about you is different now from that pre-divorce Heather?
Well, I went through a period of figuring out my identity because I felt like, like who am I? Who am I without this person who has been a part of my life for 18 years?
Since you were a kid,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. Yep. And being a wife was a big part of my identity. So I think the biggest change for me is seeing myself as an individual and understanding, like now I'm in a new health, like a healthy relationship, and I'm engaged, and I love the man I'm with, but my relationship with him is very different than my relationship was with my ex. And one of the things I love most about the new relationship is that we treat each other as individuals. Like from day one, I was like, "Hey, you do whatever you want to do, and I'll let you know if I'm okay with it or not." You know what I mean? I don't want to control you. I don't want you to try to control me. I don't want you to. I mean, I went through a whole period too where I was very loss avoidant. I don't know if you've heard of that term, but it's like you don't want to put yourself in a situation to where you could even lose something, right? So like by opening myself up to being in a new relationship, like at first I pushed everybody away. I was like, don't come. I said, dude, nobody come near me. Like because I didn't want to ever go through what I went through before. And I still struggle with that, even being engaged. I love my fiance. He's amazing. But I have moments where I'm like, oh, but if I get married, what if the marriage ends again? Like, I don't know if I can go through that again. But of course I can, because I went through it. I survived the first thing. But yeah, that's the biggest shift, is just really understanding who I am as a person and that I can handle anything after going through that. Like any type of loss, I have to open myself up, because I'm only hurting myself by running from relationships or running from people.
Well, and it sounds like this relationship is more two fully formed individuals that have coming together and enjoying life together versus two individuals that are dependent on each other to fulfill
100%.
the other part. Which is,
Yep.
in hindsight, that's a wonderful thing to learn, right? At this point in your life, is to be a fully functioning human being that is 100% capable of being
Mm-hmm.
fine as you are with no additional help. But it's wonderful having people that love you around you, but you don't need them.
Absolutely. No, you don't need them. And I think when I was in my other relationship, like every decision I made was with him in mind. It was not about me. It was about him because I thought that that's what you did when you were married. And, and even part of my religion, it's like, or my faith is, the wife is submissive to the man, and that's just what you do and whatever. But like now I realize like, no, it's not that I disagree with that, but I know that I can stand on my own and I don't need a man. Like I don't have to have a relationship in order to be happy. Be, I'm totally fine walking away from a bad situation at this point.
Well, and I think too that that awareness allows you to have a better relationship because you're going into it knowing that I'm doing this, I'm choosing this on purpose,
Absolutely.
and I
Yep.
want to enjoy this portion. It's not because I have to or I'm stuck or any of those
Hmm.
moments. Yeah, what a change. I'm curious too. I've had other friends that were married fairly young, maybe younger than you were, but then spent years with a person. And then when they got divorced, they felt that they were reliving the early years. Do you feel like you had any of those moments in which you like, hey, I missed out on my early 20s, so now I'm going to do that? Or do you feel like you came into it
You know what's
a little
weird
different?
about that? I have friends who did go complete, like when they went through their divorce, they were completely off the rails and they were just like, you know, I don't feel like I really went through that because, and I think part of it is because when I was in college, like, I got all that partying out of my system when I was in college. So it was funny because, but, my fiance, we both pushed each other away in the beginning. We were both
Oh,
like,
I remember.
yeah. we we pushed each other away for months until everyone around us was like, obviously you guys like each other. I mean, what, like, why are you guys not dating? And we were just like, no, no, no. And he would be like, nope, she needs to go sow her wild oats because she just got out of a divorce and she just needs, and that was his perception. And I'm like, no, I know who I am. I know what I want. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need to sow my oats. And I really didn't go through that period. I kind of, you know, I think I kept it together fairly well considering compared to other people I know.
Oh yeah.
So,
Well, and that's why I asked because I've seen it happen and I was curious to see if you felt that you had to have those moments that perhaps you missed because you were a young bride, if you will. You weren't that young.
yeah, I mean, I did. A good friend of mine who's also a friend of yours, a friend of ours, she actually helped me a lot through my divorce. And she was the first one to be like, well, you need to get on all the dating apps, get on Tinder, get on Bumble. She helped me set up my profile. And, and there was a whole process with that. So I did have an opportunity to date some really weird people, like just by being being on those apps. But I think that's like the extent of it is I just, I went on a few dates with some people who I was like, absolutely not. Nope, this is not going like, nope, nope, nope. Not doing that. But I also had a really great group of friends who kept me busy. So on the days that my children, because we split 50-50 custody with my ex. So I went from having my boys and a husband in the house to every other week not having kids or a husband. I was
Was
like
that
super
hard?
lonely. Oh my gosh. Yes, it was insane. So I guess from that perspective, with you asking if I went through a wild period, um, I was out as often as I could on the weeks I didn't have my kids.
More of a
Like
social
I,
life, if you will.
hmm but I'd have girlfriends who would invite me out, and I just could not be home. I was literally I could not be home by myself. Like it was just impossible.
So you were still in that kind of grieving period and that was your outlet.
Oh, absolutely. And these are friends that I've been friends with for 24 years, like that I've known since college. And they showed up. I mean, they were like calling me every day, checking on me, taking me out places. And, I met my fiance through one of those friends, and what was great is that group of friends, everybody was single at the time, so since then we've all coupled off, but it was it was really nice to have just a bunch of single people to be around, where it was like it's than just being stuck with a bunch of married couples. So it was a good thing.
When you think back to kind of when you were describing life before this shift and before your divorce, when you look back now at the person you are now, looking back, do you see cracks or do you see anything, or do you still see that as like everything was going fine, or can you now identify where things may have gone?
Yeah, I mean, I have to accept ownership of my own piece of that, because I
Of course.
think, you know,
Which is responsible of you.
yeah, in the end, right, when things went haywire, I mean, there had to have been something that he felt was unfulfilling, or that, what I mean? Like there had to have been something that caused him to want to push me away, right? So, with that being said, I think I'm just more aware now in my current relationship of like, hey, I'm choosing to do things differently too, with even the way our finances are handled, or the way, like, the way that we move forward together as a couple. I just think that I'll always do things a little differently, just because of, I think often if you're not on the same page about things, it breeds resentment within a relationship, right? So it's important that we talk through things, and that we are on the same page, and that we're not just like pushing things under the rug if it's a challenge. I'm also one to not like drama, and so is my fiance. So there's a difference there too. Like anything to avoid that is helpful.
But it sounds like you guys are so aware, or self-aware of who you are as individuals, that it's not that you're avoiding drama, it's just that you can either talk it out before it becomes overly dramatic, or scary, or any of those kind of fight type moments.
We communicate well effectively that it never turns into an actual fight. It's like, and I think that is awesome. Like, how great is it that you can be in a relationship with someone where you just kind of talk it out, and you talk it out in a way to where it's not offensive or hurting the other person. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's a difference.
Well, it goes back to all the way to episode 1. I'll quote her again, and she loves when I do this, but we were talking in our conversation about radical acceptance. And it sounds like the shift forced you to be able to do that and do it successfully, to radically accept yourself for who you are, what you bring to the table, maybe what some of your faults are, what your top qualities are, and be okay in that space. And then do that of others, just as you describe, the forgiveness of your ex and whatnot. Would you agree that you have a sense of radical acceptance?
Absolutely. And I've also figured out that it's okay to have boundaries in place. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to set the boundaries in your life that are appropriate. Like, and it goes for friendships too, right? Like any type of relationship. It's like you have to be okay with understanding and accepting who you are, and what you're okay with accepting. And like, I try to make decisions about how I handle relationships, like handle it with integrity. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there were many situations, like you say, to your point about like how your friends might influence or say things. Like, I had friends that were like, oh, you need to go and slash his tires, and you need to go do,
Right.
like, and I'm like, no, that's not how we handle this. It's like, you know um I'm proud of myself. And yes, that radical acceptance, but just handling tough situations with integrity is like really important to me. Like, I think it says a lot about a person when you see how they navigate a stressful situation, you know?
Yeah.
And man, there's so many broken people in the world, you know what I mean? It's like there's and I've been broken too, but I've always tried to maintain a positive outlook on things and not let all of the broken people affect the way that I perceive people, and to still see the good in the world after you go through something like that, you know?
Do you think you would be the person you are today had you not encountered that? Do you think, like, over the last 3 years, if you were still in that marriage, do you think you would be who you are and how you feel about yourself right now?
No way. I feel like I'm a totally different person than I was 3 years ago. Like, I don't even feel like I am the same person. And it's to the point where, like, I took a period of time where I took a full year, almost a full year off of school because I could not get my head in the game. Like, I was just like, I could not, and the pandemic did not help, you know? Like, went from being out with friends all the time, every chance I got, to having to full on sit in my sit with myself and my thoughts and my uh that grieving process. Like, I had to full on, like, embrace it. And I before I was just pushing it all off and, like, trying to distract myself with anything but my thoughts, you know what I mean? And the pandemic, like, forced me. When we were in quarantine, I was like, wow, talk about a process. Like, I literally was losing it, like, for a while, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was tough, you know, and I think a lot of people struggled with it, but I'll tell you, my mental health, like, I am a totally different person than I was 3 years ago after what I've been through.
Yeah. Do you think that that pandemic period, although really tough, was necessary for you? Do you think it helped you in the long run because you were forced to sit with it?
Absolutely. It did help me. And I was still running. Like, I think part of the reason why, I'm now engaged, to my fiance is because it allowed us to, like, everything else, it's like we were friends and we made a pact, like, our little friend group was not going to socialize with anybody but each other, and it was like we were, like, in it to, to we needed each other, you know what I mean? I think that it was helpful for me in so many ways because it allowed me to heal. It allowed me to really sit with the feelings, and boy, I understand now that whatever you're feeling, like, you have to just, like, feel it. Like, really, like, feel it in order to move on, you know? And then it also allowed me to, form a stronger bond with the friends that I had because we were around each other. And I think the pandemic, I saw so many of my friends either get divorced or get married within the last 2 years because of the pandemic. And I think it's like everybody is like, they've had to make some really hard calls because it's either pushed people together or it's pulled them apart.
Yeah, I think a lot of it goes to what you said is you really have to feel whatever you're feeling, especially when you're going through any kind of grief process. And it's what I love about this podcast, The Life Shift. And we started talking earlier, right, about how different everyone's experiences are, but yet how many common approaches or feelings or the things that we say about it are the same. Right. And so many of the conversations we talk about how you just have to honor however you're feeling at whatever moment, and you have to live in it, understand it, understand how to process it so that you can get through it.
Yes.
Because it's, like, talking about grief in general, like, say someone loses someone, it's okay to be very sad. It's also okay to have a good day, right? And to be happy and to not have to go, well, I'm not supposed to be happy because this just happened, right? You got to just feel those. We're people, we're humans, we're like emotional beings that occasionally think. Thank you, Brene Brown.
Yeah, right.
It's, I think, I think that's an important piece. And I've heard a lot of people say that, yes, the pandemic has been horrible, right? It's been a terrible thing for so many people, but there are some positives that are coming out of it. And it seems like that forced you to like slow down, pay attention to yourself and what you needed at that time so that you can emerge a stronger individual and someone that can now honor whatever she wants to honor and do whatever she wants to do.
Yep. One thing my therapist told me when I was going through all of this, like he was like, when you make a decision in life, like it's important to do it based on logic and not emotion. Like it's okay to have your emotions. It's okay to sit with them and feel things, right? Because we
Mm-hmm.
are emotional beings. But it's also important to take a step back from those emotions and say, what's best for me in given the situation? What's best for my children? How will I react to this situation in a way that is the best for me and the best, and that I can sit with, that I can reflect on and not feel guilty about, you know what I mean, instead of reacting. And I think even with friendships, or like, if you get into an argument with somebody and you start this text battle back and forth over a disagreement, and then a day later you might feel completely different about it, but all these things have been said based off of emotion, right? And it's important to like take a step back, right? And to really use your brain instead of just reacting with an emotional response.
Do you find that you approach friendships differently now as this person? Are you
Oh,
more
totally.
selective? Are
Hmm.
you,
I avoid toxic situations like the plague. Like I I know that it's okay to walk away and create distance.
and you wouldn't have done that 5 years ago?
No, I think before I was just like, so nice to friends. I would allow them to vent to me and talk to me about all of the bad things in their life, and I would absorb it, and I would just
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't have space for that in my life anymore. I like literally, like I've learned that through this situation. Like I do not have space in my life for toxic relationships. I will walk away.
Well, and you said it earlier too. You create boundaries and safe boundaries that protect you, but also allow you to do what you want to do and not, like you said, absorb the negativity and all those pieces. No, you are. I agree. You are. I wouldn't say you're 100% different because you're still Heather, right? But there's a drastic shift in. I think it's noticeable mostly in your confidence in yourself,
Hmm.
from an outsider's perspective. Not that you were not confident before, but you hold yourself much higher now, I think, and you put yourself seemingly first because you know what you need and you know what you want and you know what's appropriate for you. So I see that from the outside, and I do notice
Thank
the
you.
shift. Oh, for sure. I mean, I didn't do anything. You did it. So thank you for
My
creating this
therapist
new
helped.
version of you.
Yeah.
No, I mean, but you did the work, right?
Hmm.
And I think it's important to give yourself credit. Do you think that this experience made you, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, do you think this made you a better mother?
Oh, in some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. I'll be totally honest. Okay, I, I totally want to be there for my kids, 100%. But after going through this experience too, I realized that I also have to do things to take care of myself, and that includes like doing things without my children. Going on trips where before it's like I lived for them and for my family, like every day, day in and day out, my whole world revolved around them. But now that I have them half the time, like my poor boys, they see me going, traveling with my fiance, doing things, and I know that they get jealous. So in some ways, I mean, I do my absolute best to be the best mom I can be, but I also selfishly do things for myself that maybe I wouldn't have if I was just a wife and a mom, and in that situation. So I guess there's some guilt there, but I'm very fortunate.
I feel that that is good for your kids to see.
I
I
think it
feel
is
that that
too.
makes you, I don't think that is a negative necessarily. Just because you're not spending 100% of your time dedicating your entire life to your children doesn't make, I don't think that you should hold guilt in that. Now, if you never saw them, then maybe you should feel a little guilty. But I think there's something to be said. Your kids are essentially teenagers. One of them is officially, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they need to see that you are a fully functioning human being that cares about herself, that sets boundaries, all these things that we just talked about for the last little bit. I mean, I think that makes you a better mom because you're setting good examples, right? You're setting examples that they need to also take care of themselves. They can't just bend to the whim of anyone that comes into their life, but as long as they are a solid foundation and they're taking care of themselves. So, from my opinion, I don't think you should hold guilt there. You say you're doing it for them.
Well, and I do try to go above and beyond. I mean, even though my ex has the kids half the time, he doesn't really because their home base is here. The school that they go to is a mile away from the house, you know. So even on the days that he has them, I see them. I see them every day because they come here and they each have their own rooms here. They ride their bikes to and from school. So even on the days that he comes to pick them up, I usually have a couple hours out of the day where I can check in with them. I can tell you that they have grown so much and they have been so resilient through this whole process because they were blindsided by all of this too. They thought that their mom and dad were happily married. Next thing you know, they're divorced, you know, and it was like, and you know, I'm grateful that we had a healthy relationship and I was happily married, you know, like if anything, I know what a healthy relationship is, and in part because of my ex. Like it wasn't, you hear of other people that get divorced after 20 years and it's like, oh, I was just so miserable and we didn't get along and it was
Yeah.
but I'm grateful that we had a healthy relationship, and it helped me realize that you know, I don't have to settle for less than that. Like I can find something that's even better, and I feel like, you know, I have even stronger relationship with my fiance. And the boys, I think, have they know what healthy is too, because I think they have seen that. And even in my current relationship, I'm grateful that I found someone who's a good example to my kids. If anything, I hope that this experience enhances their lives even more. Like they've got an extra role model. They get two Christmases now. They get two birthday parties now. They get, you know, they get, you know, they, and, you know, my parents are also very active in their lives too. So Papa and Grandma will, you know, take them places and do things. And I feel like, you know, they still have good examples there. But I think both of them, when I initially moved, because we just moved to this area when I got engaged. So that was back in June. So it hasn't even been a full year, but they started school at a new school and they've done surprisingly well. They've made a ton of new friends. The school is actually better for them. So it was, that was a scary thing too, you know, uprooting them, moving them, putting them in a new environment, introducing a new man into their lives, you know.
Kids are resilient,
Yeah,
whether we want to
absolutely.
believe it or not. Yeah. And I think that to your point earlier of how some of your friends just like stayed in marriages that just were not good, kids see that and they're
Hmm.
worried, you know, I don't want my kid to be a product of divorce. And it's like, they're going to be fine. They're
Oh
resilient.
yeah.
If you have strong role models, you know, moving forward in a healthy way, they're good. So I think that you're showing them good role model.
Well, thanks. I hope so. That's I would just want them to grow up to be well-rounded adults, you know, that they make good decisions, that they, you know, that I just want them to be good humans, you know? And so I'm
That's all you
doing
can
everything I
ask.
can to get them there, you know?
All right, so I'm going to end with this question, and you might not have an answer to it, but if you could, current Heather, talk to that Heather the day after your world crumbled, what would you tell her?
Oh, I would say, girl, you are about to go through the hardest, the hardest life change that you've ever experienced, but it is going to make you stronger. It'll help you understand who you are as a person on your own. And it will make you realize that you are far more resilient than you ever expected. And to be honest with you, the life I have now is so much more exciting and rewarding than it was before. Like breaking free of that bubble that, I mean, my entire worldview has changed. I mean, I, I look at life totally different. I realize the importance of relationships with with everybody. You know what I mean? Like it's not just about one person at this point. Like I see how important it is to have friendships and have like just a diverse group of people around me. And I'm so grateful for where I am right now and that I went through that change.
And I asked people this question, knowing full well that that person that was listening probably wouldn't listen at the moment, because typically when we're in that high stress thing, there's no hope, right? How am I going to get out of this? And if only we could go back and talk to ourselves and tell ourselves, look, it's going to be hard, but you're going to get there and it's going to be worth it.
Yeah. And it was so worth it. You know?
Yeah. And it's so hard to say, right, that this terrible moment in your life was you're grateful for, or you're
Mm-hmm.
thankful that you went through such hardships to get to where you are. And I think it's just a matter of the human experience, right? And all the little pieces and all the little things, good, bad, ugly, they make us who we are at this moment in time. People ask me, would you go back and change things? And it's like, no, I like who I am right now. And I am who I am because of all the things that I've gone through.
Yeah. And you've gone through your own, Matt, you know, in the years that I have known you, I have seen you go through several life shifts of it, you know, and I love the person you are today. And I'm so
Yeah.
proud of you for also being resilient and not losing sight of who you are and or allowing people to control your life, you know? It's
Yeah.
like it's your life. You've taken control. It's awesome.
It's all about self-awareness. And I'm so glad that you've found that for yourself and you're in this space where you can, lead whatever life you want to have, and however you want to do it. It's up to you, you know? So I appreciate you sharing your life shift on this podcast. I think people are going to connect with your story, and have a lot of the same feelings that you did. And hopefully they're on the other side as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks again for inviting me to be part of this. I think this is one of the most wonderful things you've ever done. So you're truly making a difference in people's lives, which is great.
I appreciate it. I tell everyone I've never felt quite as fulfilled as I do having these conversations. And I think a lot of it is selfish. I just love having these conversations and learning more about the people that I care about so far, but maybe strangers in the future. So I appreciate you, my friend.
You
We'll see you
too.
hopefully sometime soon.
Yeah, we need to get together.
We will. All right. I will see you later.
All right.
I'm Matt Gilhooly, and this is The Life Shift, candid conversations about the pivotal moments that change lives forever. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. For more information about how you can support the Life Shift podcast, please visit www.thelifeshiftpodcast.com. See you next time.